Bom dia to everyone in Brazil. We are very excited to be part of the Beer Summit. This is Itzela Vasquez, and my guest here is Bailey Spaulding, and we are recording this from Tennessee in the United States. I'll introduce myself briefly. I have been in the beer industry for over 2 years, and I bring a different perspective as I help breweries be able to export their beer and position them as part of the beer community internationally. And it is my privilege to introduce Bailey Spaulding. Bailey is the CEO of Jackalope Brewing. Jackalope Brewing is one of the oldest craft breweries that was started by women in the United States. Not only that, they are one of the largest breweries in the state of Tennessee. They're going to be celebrating their 10-year anniversary in May. And not only do they do amazing beer, but they have a great story. And in the next 30 minutes, I want to let you into that story and why Jackalope is such a legendary beer. So without further ado, Bailey Spaulding. Hi, Bailey. How are you?
Hi, Itzela. It's great to see you, and thanks for having me and for such a kind introduction.
Oh my goodness, my pleasure. So let's go ahead and get started. How did you find yourself in the beer industry 10 years ago?
Sure. I kind of came to it from an interesting place. I moved to Tennessee originally to go to Vanderbilt Law School and thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And before that, I had a science background. So, when I moved to Nashville in 2006, and there just wasn't a lot of craft beer here at that time. And I came from the Northeast in Vermont, and we had a lot of craft beer up there. So that's kind of what I was used to. We didn't have very much beer here, and so I started home brewing and just kind of realized that beer is a science experiment, and so it really tapped into my science background, and it's also so artistic and creative and social. It just brings people together in this really beautiful way. So I fell in love with brewing beer and homebrewed my way through law school. And when I graduated, decided to open the brewery. So it's crazy that it's been almost just about 10 years now. It's wild.
So as you're in law school, and for our friends in Brazil, Vanderbilt is one of the most difficult law schools in the United States, and you're there. How do you tell your family, hey, it's been great to study law, but I think I want to open a brewery? How was that conversation with your mom?
I know, I need to try, I think, my mom, I think was kind of like, I think a lot of people say they're going to do stuff and then it never happens. And then I just kind of, I think my family just wanted me to be happy and to do something that I loved. And so they were a little surprised, I would say, at first, but always very supportive. I think going to law school certainly is not a requirement to open a brewery, but there were things that, I think everybody pulls from their past and their experience to help them in whatever they're doing now. So, certainly there were things that I did in law school that helped me, learn how to start a business, learn how to read contracts, those types of things that I wouldn't have known how to do otherwise. So it was helpful for sure.
So tell us a little bit about kind of how that process starts. So you have made your mind, you're going to go ahead and start a brewery. At the time, there were not many breweries in Tennessee. You were going to be the first women open brewery. So how did you then pitch your idea to others about why would they support you to go this very different path?
Well, so it was, okay, I want to do this. And so writing the business plan was really helpful for me because it makes you think it through, but then also that's what you have to show people what your idea is. And so I think you know, one of the best pieces of advice I got from another woman, you know, we kind of had a woman, not brewer, but business owner, entrepreneur, who kind of was a little bit of a mentor for us in the beginning. And she said, you know, people invest in breweries for the same reason they invest in, you know, sports teams. It's an emotional sell. You know, they want to do it because they think it's cool. You know, and those were definitely the people who ended up investing in our brewery. You know, we couldn't afford to do it without investors. We had to raise money from private investors, and they were all people who wanted to. They saw the dream and they wanted to support it. And you know, it was never about, you know, we're going to open this brewery and make you a ton of money really super quick, and you know, all this stuff. It was they saw the passion behind it and saw what it could do for the community, and you know, we were able to fund it through people like that. So it's definitely really scary, you know, when you're taking this idea that was your idea and you don't know whether or not people are going to also think it's a good idea or if they're going to laugh at you. And we definitely, you know, we never had people laugh at us to our faces. But you know, we had lots of people who we showed it to, lots of roads we went down that didn't pan out. And so you've got to, you know, kind of have a little bit of a thick skin about that and just kind of keep going and say, okay, you know, that wasn't a good fit, but maybe this is. And, you know, I think we raised all of our startup capital in about 6 months. I just, and granted, we should have started with a lot more money than we did.
Now, let me ask you a question. As you go through these, because we're trying to talk about diversity. So as you go through your business plan and you're starting to show it to others, did you find yourself at any point thinking, am I an outsider? People here do not look like me. People that I'm talking to do not have a different background than mine. Did you ever feel that way? Or did you feel that you were welcome from day one?
You know, I felt honestly like we were welcome from day one. I didn't, I don't know any, you know, I can't speak from anyone else's perspective, but I guess I was not, you know, having gone to law school and been in science, I was not unused to being in a male-dominated industry. Like, you know, being a science background, being a law background, that's more male than women. So that wasn't unusual for me. And so, honestly, I think, you know, there was definitely people who were like, I guess it was like, sometimes I didn't know why people thought, you know, people just thought I was a little nuts because I was 27, had just graduated law school and was going to start a brewery. You know, I don't know I don't know why they might have looked at me funny, but, I never felt like I wasn't welcome in the industry. And from, you know, like you were saying, there were only a couple other brewers in Nashville at that time. And both of them were extremely welcoming to us and extremely helpful. And I think it is definitely a male dominated industry by, you know, leaps and bounds, but it's also a very friendly industry. And so nobody in the industry, I think, is, or at least who runs a brewery is purposefully, you know, keeping women out of it at all. I think there's probably some other factors in there, but yeah, we were always welcome.
But I think you bring something really, really interesting, because the other breweries welcome you and they wanted you to succeed.
Yes.
We've had conversations in the past about how one of the owners of one of the biggest brewery in Tennessee, and perhaps one of the most known, became a little bit of a mentor to you.
Yes.
So, so you brew at the beginning, right? You were the brewer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so so you're coming from law school. Yes, you have a background in science. I believe you study biology.
Yep.
And so how did you develop your recipes, and how did you develop confidence that you could do the recipes consistently, time and time again, when you're presenting this idea, when there's professional brewers?
Sure. I think sometimes ignorance is bliss. You know, it's like if you don't know that you shouldn't be able to do it, then you think you should, you know. And I think we somehow just had this, you know, so Jackalope got its name. So a jackalope is a mix between a jackrabbit and an antelope, and I believe so. There's like a bunny with antlers, and so I believed in them growing up. They're not real, or people say they're not real. They might be real, but so it kind of became a joke. I have a T-shirt. The name of the brewery came from this T-shirt I have that has a jackalope on it, and it says "Believe in yourself." And so I really think that was such a big part of it. It was, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I do believe in myself and my ability to. I'm going to figure it out one way or another. And so, you know, the basic beer science is the same, whether you're home brewing or, you know, brewing on a you know, big brew house. And so I knew we could figure that part out. You know, really it was like the mechanical engineering part of it, and the business running part of it, that was probably the steepest learning curve for us, because I didn't know anything about those things at all. So I think it was more just this belief that we'd be able to figure out. I think it was a different time period as well. You know, it was 2011 when we opened. There weren't a lot of breweries. I think people in general were a little bit more willing to go on this journey with you, as far as you didn't have. I think now sometimes I think there's just more knowledge in our consumer base now, and people in general are just not as kind to each other as they were 10 years ago. And so I don't know if it would have been received as well as it was then that it would be now. You know, I think we were really going on this journey and inviting Nashville to come on it with us. And I think they expect maybe a little bit more, you know, perfection out of the gates now. I don't know. I feel like we've kind of, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't remember what the question was.
No, you absolutely, because I was asking you about how do you develop confidence. And I think the key message here is, which is true, is believe in yourself, which is really a great segue to talk about Jackalope and the name of it, and also the unique story behind every beer. And I'll ask you, what are you drinking? But as I go to that, I just wanted to summarize, because I think two things you said that really impressed on me, and I think it doesn't matter whether you're in the beer industry or you're new to any industry. First is the basics of the process. So when you were talking about brewing, home brewing versus brewing in the industry at a larger scale, the basic science is the same, and the quality control is the same. Whether you're brewing for your family, you definitely don't want to have beer, right? And so you take those qualities from your small batch, and then you take them to your higher production level. What I thought was really interesting is how you talked about you were confident, like you had your science background, you knew you could make it work and figure it out. And I think that is something that is not taught. I think that is something about, I mean, that element of uniqueness, believing in yourself and being able to push forward even when there were setbacks. So tell us about that, setbacks. Okay, so before we go to that, I really want to talk about your name and Jackalope, and let's talk about Jackalope itself. You talked about how it was a T-shirt that you had, and how it taught you about believing in yourself.
Yeah.
So is that did you put the name out there, and did your investors were taken aback, or were they like, yeah, let's go with that name?
They were all into it. I mean, yeah, the name, I had the name like right from the beginning of my homebrew career. You know, it was like I brewed beer and was like, oh, I'm going to do this. You know, I homebrewed once and was like, this is it. And so I had the name from the very start. And so none of the investors questioned it. I think they all liked it. It gave, like, I think one thing that does speak to people about our brewery again is that people feel like they really know us. Everything that we put out has a story behind it, and I think there's a lot of authenticity, and I think that's why a lot of people choose craft beer, is they want to feel connected to the product and what they're drinking. And so I think that level of authenticity and passion really shone through when we were talking about what the name was going to be, and also gave some feel to what the brand itself would be like, as far as being a little mischievous and, folklore-y, and so now all of our beers are named after kind of different myths or legends. We have a little tagline that says "Drink Legendary," and so it's a fun thing for our whole staff now to work on. We have a much larger group than when we started. We just had it was 3 of us that opened the brewery, and now, during non-COVID times, we had about 30 staff members. It's a little smaller now, but yeah.
But okay, so you have the brewery, you have the story, you have the investors. Mm-hmm. Tell us about, I'm sure there's been setbacks throughout the process, but is there one in particular that taught you, if nothing else, the value of believing in yourself and continue to go on?
Definitely. I mean, I think right in the beginning, again, it's like you write this business plan, and they're really, I do think they're very important to do, but, it goes out the window very quickly, the details of it. And I think one thing, our original, 15-barrel brew house was about 6 months late in arriving. And so, we had kind of forged all our plans, assuming certain dates and times. And, we had our license, we were paying rent. And I think probably in any industry when you're starting a business, but just the importance of learning how to adapt, that knowing, getting comfortable in that nothing is going to go the way you think it's going to, and not resisting that, but actually being like, okay, we're going to make a plan, and then the plan is going to change. And so, with that, our brew house being 6 months late, we had our licenses, we're paying rent. And so we ended up getting just a half barrel, 1 keg, basically glorified homebrew system, and brewed on that for the first 6 months we were open. So we started only having enough beer to have our tap room open on Fridays from 4 to 8 p.m. And that was it. We were open 4 hours a week. And it wasn't because we were trying to be like secretive and cool or exclusive. It was just, that was all the beer that we could brew. And so, that was definitely not the plan, but it worked, and it allowed us again to, really work through our recipes, really get to know our loyal customer base and what they might want. And I wouldn't recommend it as a plan, but I also really value that time. And do think we learned a lot from it. So that was the really big one in the beginning. We brewed 160 times on 1 keg at a time before we were able to power up our brew house. So
wow. Yeah. So those were long days.
Yes, those were very, very long days, and I'd brew the beer and then serve it to people. It was like we didn't have staff. It was like brewing all the beer, doing all the bartending, cleaning. I mean, you name it. It was an interesting time, and so you really learned every aspect of your business, and I think that's important.
And talking about interesting times and learning to adapt,
Yeah.
Tell us what happened in March of 2020.
Yeah, it was good training for this year. So, you know, generally March 21st is our biggest day of the year. It's when we release Lovebird, which is our big seasonal here. And 6 days before that, Nashville got shut down. So it was very, very strange. We're, again, you know, we do draft and cans, but prior to COVID, we did about 65% draft beer. And that just disappeared overnight because all the bars and restaurants got shut down, as well as our tap room. And so we're very lucky that we have a canning line already, and you know, decided to be like, okay, now we've got all this time. You know, what are we going to focus on now? That I think both for ourselves and our staff and for our consumers, you know, I think everyone was just has had a hell of a year. So so starting pretty quickly in March, we started doing these small batch can releases, where probably 3 weekends out of the month we would release a different new beer, and it gave us something to look forward to and to kind of get to be creative and not just sit and wonder what was going to happen. And it also, you know, I think in the beer industry, we're entertainers as a profession. You know, we're trying to to bring entertainment into people's lives and bring positivity. And so even though people couldn't sit and be social, giving them these beer releases to look forward to every week did feel like a way of getting people to connect and have something to look forward to. And so that was a really big pivot for us, but it's something that we're going to continue. You know, now we've released 21 different beers since March. And we're going to continue doing these small batch releases once, you know, the pandemic is over as well. And they've been just really well received and a lot of fun, and a great, you know, they've been a great distraction and a great revenue source. So it's been good for us all around to get that going.
I think that's fantastic, and I think you hit something that we, you know, probably the first time I've heard it is how we, as in the beer industry, we're entertainers, and you talked a bit about this at the beginning. Is the story? It's what are we trying to convey? And one of the things that for me, to be part of the beer industry, is the welcoming. I've always felt very welcome. Mm-hmm. I'm an engineer by trade, and I have over 20 years of business experience. So I came to the industry from a different perspective, trying to say, hey, I could help get the story to other markets, and I could help see not only the story of the beer, but more importantly, the human story behind it, mm-hmm. the passion, the endurance, the willingness to pivot, the willingness to try something different. And sometimes it doesn't work. Yeah. And being able to get up again and give it another shot. And so as you look back at the last almost 10 years with Jackalope. Yeah. And I cannot, you know, finish this conversation without talking about the amazing opportunity you had this year at the National Homebrewers Association conference. So one of the things that changed this year, the United States has the National Homebrewers Conference, which is well attended by teams from Brazil and others. It was virtual, which is always, you know, that's kind of like the new, one of the new ways to reach team members and reach people. Yeah. Right, where you gotta pivot, right? You gotta adapt. But tell us about, how was that call when they said, hey, we would like for you to be one of our keynote speakers?
It was a total surprise. I can't, you know, it's like hard to remember. I think it was around January when they called me. And so we at that point, it was supposed to be in Nashville. But it was, again, I think you always see yourself as kind of the new kid, and that you don't really realize that anybody's paying attention. So it was, definitely really exciting and surprising, and something. It was definitely I wanted to do a good job, and I was excited to have all these homebrewers come to Nashville, because that was where I started. I was a home brewer, and I really identify with a lot of them. And virtual was almost a little bit more scary. It was in June. At this point, I feel like now virtual is easy. It's easy to talk to a screen now. But it was. I'm really glad that they still made it work, and I still got to talk to people even if I didn't get to see them. But yeah, it was cool.
I think that just speaks again about the story and continuing to believe, continuing to work on that dream, and continue to drink legendary. I mean, I love to be able to send some of this to Brazil. It's Chai Walker, which is an absolutely delight with not only the smell in it, but it's just a fantastic beer. So what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Sarka, which is our Pilsner. So it's named after kind of a Bohemian lady warrior whose name was Sarka. And so again, we, for our names, we get our whole team involved. It's a total team collaboration as far as what beers end up getting named. It was clearly, we wanted kind of an Eastern European Bohemian character for Sarka, and to pair with the history of Pilsner beers. And so that's where that came from. And it's fun. Again, we find ways to connect, even though we can't. It's hard when you can't sit down with your team and all just drink a beer together and hang out. But we still find ways to make it happen. And certainly, working with you this year has been really fun as well. Oh, my husband's just leaving. Working with you has been really fun. And again, something maybe we wouldn't have had as much time to look at would be, if we want to expand into other markets. And just for me, again, even just learning about how, what the beer kind of culture and markets are like in other countries is really interesting. And at the very least, when you can't travel, makes you feel like you're at least connecting with people in Brazil or Hong Kong or Denmark. There's lots of places we've gotten to talk to, Mexico, and so that's just been really fun.
And it's been a tremendous pleasure, and I really like how Sarka represents a Bohemian warrior female, because as I think about the audience that is going to be listening to this interview, I think that describes them perfectly.
Nice.
Bohemian warrior ladies getting up every single day, trying to make the dream come true, despite the setbacks, despite everything that comes our way. And so as we bring this to a close, I wanted to thank you so very much for making yourself available. It's always such a privilege to have an opportunity to work with you, Bailey. And if you could give a message, I know that, we would absolutely love to be in Brazil, and that would have been absolutely great. My goodness. But if you want to leave one last message to the ladies that are listening to this talk, and with your 10 years of experience doing this, and you're a mom and you're a wife, and so life is busy. Your life is busy, and then you have a team that you're responsible for in the middle of perhaps some of the most unheard times in recent history, and here you are having an opportunity to tell others how you have continued to move forward. So I want to leave you with the last minutes to just give a personal message to the team in Brazil and many ladies through Latin America that are going to be listening to this.
That's so cool, and really humbling. And I think like we were saying before, it's just believe in yourself, but also know that it's okay to not be perfect. I think that is incredibly important right now. we're all, I mean, everyone has just an insane amount of stress and weirdness going on in their lives. And I think, you know, whether you're in a pandemic or not, you've got, you know, having that belief in yourself and also knowing that it's okay to not, you know, to not be perfect. Nobody's perfect. It's about being willing to go on the journey to get better. You know, I think that is one of Jackalope's core values is constant improvement. I don't think it's any fun to think that where you are in your life right now is the best you're ever going to be. What's the point? So I think, you know, always, you know, just believing that you are capable, and you're doing a great job, and that also you can always be better than you are is kind of what keeps us going for sure. So I hope that speaks to you guys as well, or you ladies as well. I'm from New England. We say you guys.
Well, that is fantastic. Thank you so much, Bailey. Thank you so much to the organizers of the Beer Summit in Brazil. We're humbled that you guys consider having us. And anytime these restrictions start lifting and you can come back to the United States, do consider coming to visit Tennessee. I think Bailey will be super happy to have you in the brewery, and would love to show you.
Anyone who's listening, if you're ever in Nashville, reach out to us and we'll show you around the brewery.
Well, thank you so much, Bailey. Again, cheers, and have a great conference in Brazil. Thank you so much.